I'm Boze Bell, and today we're going to be talking about a legendary car in the history of the West. All my life, I've heard that Tom Mix was driving a custom car on the day he died on October 12th, 1940. And wouldn't you know how thrilled I am to find the guy who found that car, and not only found it, but restored it to its former glory. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning. I'm excited to be here too.
Yeah, this is so amazing to me. Now tell me a little bit about where was the car when you found it, and where was it?
Well, I'd been looking for this car for quite a while, and we owned Cords, so we loved Cords. And I got a call from a friend of mine that it was coming up at a small auction in Missouri. So we rushed out there, and I happened to be going to Europe on business the next day. And I sent my brother over there, and he bought the car. Went straight into restoration, and this is the product that came out of that 3-year restoration.
Now, what year is that?
Well, I bought it in 2010.
In 2010?
Yeah.
Now, he died in 1940. How many owners had it, and how bad a shape was it?
Well, there was a half a dozen owners of the car, restored to kind of different conditions. But at one point, the car was completely disassembled and laying in a field in California.
No,
So,
really?
So
Laying outdoors?
laying outdoors.
Well, it must have been in really bad shape.
It was in bad shape. I had photos of that, of them taking it out of there, so it was in bad shape. No more interior and things like that. But the guy who restored it and saved it, he was really a Cord guy, so he was able to put it back to where it was. Now, when I bought it, it looked good from about a block away. But, he crashed this in 1940, so there was still a lot of damage. The cowl was smashed down, and still a lot of damage, and it took some while, but we restored it right back to where it was as it came out of the factory. And then we wanted to portray the car exactly a minute before Tom Mix died, and he put a lot of things on it, so that was the fun part.
So let's talk about that. Now, this is for starters, it's a custom car. There was only like a couple hundred made. They were handmade. Is that true?
Well, almost all the Cords were handmade because they didn't produce very many of them. And this Cord model only made in 36 and 37.
Got it.
And there were only 96 supercharged Cord Phaetons.
Now, he put on all these custom items which you restored. How many are there? I've heard 12, I've heard 18. Is it more than 20?
I think there's 20 of them,
And give us an example of some of the crazy things that he put into this car.
Well, on the front of the fenders, where you'd normally have a splash guard,
Yeah.
Mix was such a showman, he had leather made for that with his brand in it.
Wow.
And I got to tell you, that any show or any place I take it, that's the first place that people go, because they've never seen leather on a car like this.
Leather on the splash guard, that's fantastic.
I know, and I found the original leathers in an attic in California. So we were able to find almost everything, and either reproduced it from that, or take these medals on the car.
Yeah.
There's 2 of them on the hood.
On the hood, yeah.
Yeah, well, Tom Mix was in Europe in 1939, and the King of Denmark gave him those medals.
And so he put it on his
Yeah,
car.
he just screwed holes in them and put them on the car.
Now, how did you match that? How did you match the medals?
Great story, because I found them in a museum in Oklahoma, and they let me take them out and recast them. And so then it was just a matter of chroming and painting to match, but they are an exact duplicate of what Tom Mix had on the hood.
Now, even the accelerator has his name on the accelerator. And what's that item at the bottom?
Well, there's a silver cup for your boot.
Oh, so his boot could fit in there for the accelerator?
I can testify your boot fits right in there. And he had Tom Mix, on that leather cover. So he also put a gun in the car.
Well, now let's get to that. That to me is the holy grail of what we're talking about here. But now, one of the eyewitnesses to the crash, he passed them on the road to Florence.
Right.
And it was a dirt road. And they said he blasted a siren. He had a siren in this for like a police siren?
Oh, he did, yeah. And he was an honorary deputy sheriff in California. He was an honorary Texas Ranger. He was an honorary fireman. So he was able to use this siren. And I found that siren in the same attic in California that I found the leather.
And so you think it's authentic?
I know it's all
Oh,
bad.
you think?
Because I have original photos of the siren, and so we restored it back to where it was,
Now,
and it worked.
Can we blast it up here
Oh,
in a few
sure.
minutes?
Oh,
Okay, I
yeah.
want to hear that. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And the second part of it is, I believe in their testimony, the couple were in their car, and imagine you're going 40 and you're talking about crops and stuff, and in your rearview mirror you see this rooster tail of dust, and here comes this crazy car that, by the way, is cigarette yellow. Is that the cream? Cigarette
Can
cream?
you believe the factory named this car Cigarette Cream, the color?
That's the color, cigarette
You wouldn't
cream.
do that today.
No.
Cigarette Cream.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So they see this maniac coming up behind him, estimated 80 miles an hour.
Right.
All right. He passes them with the siren.
Yeah.
And then he's got this weird tail light that swings.
It's called a wigwag light. That's another crazy thing.
Tell me about that.
Well, that's a 1937 Studebaker option. So Mix just grabbed it from a Studebaker and had it put on his car.
And what does it do?
Well, when he hit the brakes, it wigwags back like
wigwags?
Yeah, like a railroad sign. You know.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get to the Holy Grail here. Tom Mix had a holster and pistol custom made for the steering wheel. Tell me about
right under the steering column. A lot of people think it's an emergency brake, but it's really a handle on the gun. The gun's a really neat story because it was in the Tom Mix Museum in Oklahoma. And about 15 years ago, some teenage kids got in and stole a bunch of guns.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and so they had that gun with his TM on it on one side and Mix on the other.
Yeah.
And guess what? They're probably sitting there looking at that gun and they said, we can't sell this gun. And so they filed it up.
Oh, God, I hope.
So you can
they're-
just, in a museum, you can just barely see that. But I found a book published in the 1950s, and it showed a picture of the gun. And so we found a gun that was similar, which is a very unique Smith & Wesson that they only made a very few of that Tom Mix had. And we simulated the grips and put that on there.
And now, didn't his daughter testify or tell a story about how he would be driving down the road with her in the car, and he would just reach down, pull up the pistol, and start shooting at rabbits at 80 miles an hour?
Well, she'd get mad at him all the time because he'd say, take the wheel, take the wheel. And by the time she'd reached over and grabbed the wheel, he had that gun shooting at anything he could think of. So,
That is fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about the last seconds of his life. It's a little unclear to me, or it was, that he's on a dirt road, and it's a straight shot. And he can see to the horizon, but he doesn't see an important missing element. Is my theory.
yes.
And what was that missing place?
Well, it's just, it's here in Arizona, and it's now called the Tom Mix Wash. So there's a big question of how he did that. And I can only say how he missed that.
Yeah.
I can only say, he was up to 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning with the band that knew his wife in Tucson. And he was known to take a nip or two, obviously.
Yeah. Well, he allegedly took a nip or two on the road trip, if you believe the people in Oracle Junction.
Yeah, I know it.
Yeah.
And I believe that.
Yeah.
He drank some. And later in his career, he actually drank more. I don't know if it's any different than any other entertainer, but
No.
I think all those factors can come to play. And he's just roaring down that road toward Florence, and he just misses it. He misses what's going on up. They had to have a barrier in front of the
Well, let's
bridge.
stop for a minute. They were rebuilding the bridge across the wash.
Correct.
And so my theory is he's driving 80 and he looks, and the view goes right across. You can't see down.
Right.
Now they claim, and at the last possible second he sees it, but he's going 80 and he spins. And some said he was standing up and he went into the watch and it flipped over and the suitcase killed him.
Right.
But it's controversial as to was there a warning sign out, and do you believe that? That says bridge out, slow down.
Well, this is 1940, so I could see that there wasn't a sign out there.
You don't think there was?
I don't think there
They're
was.
just
Nobody's
covering they're
nobody's
covering
ever
their rear end.
testified to that.
Well, I thought one of the highway people who was working on the bridge said we heard this roar, and then he blasted past the first warning sign. Did I make that up, or is that a real thing? I seem to remember reading that.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Yeah,
But
and
how close that was to the bridge is a big question.
Yeah, and my theory is, okay, we had a couple nips, you're going 80, it looks straight,
Yeah.
you don't see the indentation, and then you see the sign, which they probably put out 15 feet from the bridge because everybody drove up to
that's
it
my
at
guess.
20 miles.
Yeah.
They went, oh, okay,
That's my
honey, and they
guess.
went down in the ditch.
Well, see, this car out of the factory could do 110 miles an hour.
Wow.
I've driven these Cords at 70, 80 down the highway all the time.
And what does that feel like?
Oh, it feels like fun. I mean, it's great. And I found a lot of evidence that people said that he drove real fast.
Sure.
And I can see that.
Yeah.
Big cowboy star like that, in a very powerful car. The car was supercharged, and so it went fast, and he went fast.
Yeah.
And everybody said that. So, he did come up on that. And then there was a worker on the bridge that testified that he came out finally, tried to wave Mix down.
Yes. Is that true?
Yes.
But it was too late. He was going too fast.
It was too late. Yeah, it was too late. And
now, have you heard the testimony that Mix saw too late that the bridge was out? Mm-hmm. They said he stood up trying to steer. It's a convertible, the top's down, and he stood up. Do you buy that?
I buy that.
Yeah.
The reason being that if he's going that fast, I mean, what would you do? You'd stand on those brakes too.
Yeah, right.
He always drove with the top down.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
And if you look at the crash photos, he must have hit the brakes hard, skidded over right there, and fell down the car upside down.
Car flipped upside down. Yeah.
And then he was flipped out.
Yeah.
And these Halliburton suitcases that he had.
Now, this isn't Halliburton, the Iraq War people who did the ammunition?
It's a family name.
It's a Halliburton. So a Halliburton suitcase was packed behind him, and as he tried to stop and went into the wash, the suitcase came forward and broke his neck. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct.
That is just crazy.
That's what everybody has testified to it. And if you go to the museum in Oklahoma, the Tom Mix Museum, they have that suitcase, and they will point to you, that's the dent that killed Tom Mix.
That's the suitcase that killed Tom Mix.
That is the suitcase, yeah.
Wow.
And this Halliburton pre-39 were really heavy metal suitcases. They weren't light.
Yeah.
So it's a very plausible story.
Yeah.
And that's what they testified, that Mix hit soft sand, but that suitcase smacked him and did it.
And of course, today, Tom Mix wash, I had one wag tell me, isn't it amazing that he died in a wash named after him? And that's a crazy phrase.
I know.
But it's a mecca. You have to go to the Tom Mix Memorial near south of Florence, Arizona. And you've been out there, obviously, many times.
With the car.
And now, have you been in the wash to see if it gives up any clues?
I've been in the wash, and I read accounts where people have gone in the wash hunting for certain things.
Yeah.
And I know that Neil Hayworth, who restored this car once, he had a friend that went into that wash and found a hubcap off the car.
Wow.
So, but today, everybody's been there, everybody's seen it, so I don't think you're going to find any artifacts today.
Yeah. Now, what got you interested? Were you a Tom Mix fan growing up, or is this something that came to you because you're a car nut?
Well, it's kind of both, but I grew up about 30 minutes from the 101 Ranch Wild West show.
Yep.
So I collected their stuff all my life, and Tom Mix got a start there.
Yes, he did.
He left there in 05 to start doing movies, so I knew all about Mix, all about the 101 Ranch. And my wife and I went to a car show, and I saw a Cord. I have never seen a Cord, the Art Deco look of a Cord.
Yeah.
And we said, when we make it, we need to buy a Cord. Now, some people say when they make it, they're going to put a swimming pool in.
Yeah.
Not us.
Not you.
We're going to buy a Cord.
You're going to buy a Cord.
So I love Cords, 101 Ranch, Tom Mix, and it just all came together for me.
Now, what is this? I see this in print, and I don't think I've ever heard it out loud. It's called a Cord Phaeton.
Yeah. It's called a Phaeton.
What is Phaeton? What does that mean?
Well, there are wagons that were called a Phaeton also back in the day.
In the Old West days, in the wagon?
And that's how it came about. Basically, it's a convertible with one seat. I mean, 2 seats. The Phaeton has 2 seats.
Yeah.
So it's just the name that they adopted. But there are many cars that use that Phaeton name because it was indicative of a 2-seat car convertible.
You're driving down the road. Ever feel the ghost of Tom Mix?
I think Tom Mix is there all the time because he would love what's going on with the car.
Yeah, he was a showman.
It's not just a car, it's Tom Mix. And we had it in the Arizona Concours just a week ago Sunday. And every show I've ever been to, people mobbed that car. I've seen 100 people around that car at one time. But they mobbed the car because it's so interesting and the history. And I'm a Western historian. I love the history, and I know you do too, of course.
Yeah, yeah.
But they just liked that whole idea that this was Tom Mix's car, and he was the, you know, in the teens, he did over 300 movies, but in the teens he was the highest paid actor in Hollywood. He made $17,500 a week. But he was
before taxes, income taxes. That's before.
If you paid them.
Yeah.
You know, it just all came together, and we're just so happy with it. You know.
Well, you and I have more than one thing in common. Okay, we both love cars. All right, we both love history, but you and I, when we were in our teens, were drummers.
Yes, that's right.
You were in a band. What was the name of the band?
Aristocrats.
I was in a band called the Exits.
Yeah.
And what's the one song that you got the most requests for? Don't say the name. Let's play it on here.
Oh,
you ready? You ready?
Ready?
Ready? Go.
Wipe out!
that was a killer. Man.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah. It's a beauty, man. It's a privilege to be in the damn thing.
Isn't it fun?
Oh, jeez. It's crazy. This is the car he drove.
I know it. So, of course, Tom Mix had the best sports car of the day. It's a great design. It's a long hood, sits low, all kinds of gadgets on it.
Yeah, I noticed the shifters at your fingertips. It's not on the floor like I thought it probably would be. But I really am impressed by the sound. It's got a roar to it, a little more throaty than I was expecting from something from 1940.
Yeah, well, that's good, you know, and it's got supercharger, and that makes a little bit of extra sound to it also. I just love driving the car. It's so much fun. And when a Tom Mix fan gets in this car, oh, they're in heaven.
Oh, yeah. No,
absolutely heaven.
When I think that this is the car, it's just thrilling to me. And man, he was really ahead of his time, wasn't he? He was really pushing the envelope on what a car could be, and he wanted one, and then he certainly used it at full speed, didn't he?
Oh, he did. He drove fast all the time. I've documented that before, how fast he goes. So no wonder he missed that bridge and flipped over.
Now, have you heard about, he had a previous wreck, I think the year before, and he was in a raging river, and they had to get a stick to try to pull him out. Have you heard about that one? He almost died the year prior.
I never heard that story. That's interesting.
We're going to cover that in True West. So.
Oh, good.
Yeah. We've uncovered all kinds of anecdotes about his driving, about his... Whoa!
Here we
the
go.
Baby turns, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Takes a little bit more radius than today's cars.
Yeah. So what did he pay for this brand new? Did we know?
Right at $3,000. Yeah,
about $3,000. And what an average car went, like a Model A, probably at the time was like how much? 500,000?
500 at most. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Well, it gives you a newfound appreciation as far as steering it and what would happen if he was going 80 miles an hour and how hard it would be to stop it. That I certainly have a first-hand feel for that sitting in the car.
Well, if you've ever driven a 20s, 30s, 40s car without power steering, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, it's like a tractor. It's like driving a John Deere, really.
And they needed these big steering wheels to make those turns.
Yep.
That would have been quite a trip that he made from New York all the way down to Arizona, and he was, of course, heading out to L.A. He was visiting a ex-son-in-law by the name of Knight in the Florence area, and then his daughter at the time lived in Phoenix, so that was his destination there. We don't know anything past that point.
Yeah. Now, I'd heard that, or somebody supposed that he was trying to get livestock for his South American tour, and Florence is well known as a livestock center, and I wonder if that was the motive to go see his ex.
I bet it was. Yeah. And Knight was a rodeo champion himself.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now, he wasn't the one that he disowned his daughter for being with a rodeo bum, was it?
No, but that was, you know, she got married at 17, and
this is Thomasina.
Now this is Ruth.
Ruth.
And he disowned. Well, I'm not sure he disowned her, but he cut
He
her
wrote
off.
her out of the will.
Yes, yes,
That's
it's
pretty
true.
serious.
That's serious. And he also cut off her allowance. He was still giving her allowance, so she sued.
Oh, that's nasty.
She sued. I know it.
While he was still alive?
Yeah, well, like immediately. And Tom Mix won the case, but in a year and a half later, they were reconciled, and she was riding to the circuses with him and performing in the circuses. So they were able to work that out. Plus, the bum didn't work out as a husband.
So he called that one. He
Yeah.
knew a bum when he saw one.
Yeah, exactly.
If anybody knew a rodeo bum, it would be him.
It would have been him.
Yeah,
Correct. Yeah.
So he saw something his daughter didn't see.
Well, he'd been married 5 times too.
Yeah.
In total, so he knew a little bit about marriages.
Now,
Or
what
maybe
about,
you'd say he didn't know a whole lot about marriages,
well,
having gone through 5.
yeah, I think there's an issue with celebrities, and everything you gain, you lose something, and your greatest strength is your greatest weakness. And I think he was so handsome that that became a liability in terms of temptation. All right, so we might as well record this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So here
Yeah.
we are, Bobby, 2 drummers.
Two drummers
caught in the middle of nowhere.
driving a famous car.
We're trying to get a famous car that's as messed up as my 1957 Austin Healey, which would do this all the time.
Wait a minute, that's a British car.
I know.
They were always messed up.